This episode is brought to you by Monkey Nutrition.
I read a book called The Science of Sports Training, and
Yeah.
there was one of the concepts the author was explaining was how if you learn one sport, learning each subsequent sport becomes easier because you've unlocked that ability. And I'm guessing it's the same with mastery. Once you've put in your 10,000 hours for one subject, then every subject becomes easier to master. Is that right?
Oh, completely. And there's a debate in neuroscience about that, and I think it's a silly debate, whether skills in one area transfer to the other. But I think it's clear, the demonstration, because it's not just the fact that learning one sport now makes it easier to physically do the other sport. It's a mental thing. Mm-hmm. You've gained the confidence in yourself, and you learn the process that it takes. Mm-hmm. So for instance, in the book, I have a story of a fighter pilot. He's one of the masters. He's called the last American ace because he shot down several planes during Desert Storm. Yeah. And there are not many dogfights left in the U.S. Air Force. Mm-hmm. And his story was, he's Cesar Rodriguez. He's sort of this short, squat Mexican. I think he's from Puerto Rico, but he's American. Mm-hmm. And he went into flying, and he was not a golden boy. The golden boys were these guys who just had a feel for flying. They were fearless. The physical process didn't bother them because it's pretty rough. Mm-hmm. And they just had a video game type feel for it. Okay. And he wasn't. He was like, it was driving him crazy. He would get panicky. He said he felt like the plane was beating him up every time because it is physically demanding. And all he did was he remembered he was a quarterback in high school. And the same thing happened in high school where I can't do this. I'm not physically gifted. I'm short. I'm not. And he just overcame it by practice. He learned, he got smarter than other people. He devoted more hours. And he did the same thing when he went to fighter pilot school. He just practiced harder than anyone else because he trusted the process that when you repeat something often enough, the brain likes that, and you learn it, and it becomes automatic, and it leads to something else, and something else, something else. So learning any skill brings you that confidence and develops that pattern of how repetition can become a powerful thing.
Mm-hmm. Hard work trumps talent every single time, pretty much.
I'm a huge believer in that, and I want to debunk the myth that it's all about being born with a high IQ, or mommy and daddy sends me to the right school. Every story in the book is pretty much about someone who's more persistent than others. So I even make the case that Albert Einstein, and he says it himself, he was simply more persistent. He spent 10 years meditating one problem, and he cracked it. Thomas Edison was this insane, persistent person who basically invented electric light as we know it now, with the most incredible, laborious, tedious process. But he wanted to crack this problem, and nothing would stop him. So hard work definitely trumps anything else.
What are your thoughts on this, Brian?
When Nick mentioned this 10,000 hour phrase that you hear a lot, I was just curious of your thoughts on that. Do you think it is simply that 10,000 hours? Because it sounds like Freddie Roach spent more than 10,000 hours.
He did 30,000 hours. Okay. And my book is more about the what happens to you after 20,000 hours. Look, it's been statistically, studies have done it. It's a fact. The 10,000 hour thing is an amazing idea because they did these studies and they showed that people in chess and music and some sports, after essentially 10,000 hours, give or take 500 here or there, the brain is now operating on a different level. It knows it so well that you see a change in people playing chess, and they've demonstrated it. There's no argument. The 10,000 hour rule exists, and I believe in it. So the idea is even Mozart went through 10,000 hours before he became a really great musician. There's no way you're going to go around it. In other words, there's no shortcut. There's no way that you're born brilliant and you only need 2,000 hours. It's been shown, no, you need the 10,000 hours. But I maintain that if you follow something that you love, then the 10,000 hours doesn't feel like boredom. You're able to push past the initial barriers, the initial obstacles of the tedious nature of it. And it's easier to have the patience to go through the repetition. If you're not doing something that you love, you're never even going to get to the 10,000 hours. You're never going to get there because you're going to tune out. So I go on and I try and describe what happens at 20,000 hours, but that's mastery.
And that's just as a rough, if you did something part-time, 20 hours a week, that's 10 years to get to 10,000 hours.
Pretty
roughly.
much, if you do like 3 or 4 hours a day for 10 years, that would end up to 10,000 hours. And that's not that impossible, really. I mean, most people don't, you take weekends off and you do 8 hours someday. It's actually not as much as you think. It really can fit into 10 years. Some people work so hard it can fit into 7, 8 years. Depends on how much you love it.
And the 10,000 hours encompasses not just the actual physical repetition of what you're trying to get good at, but it's also the research surrounding that topic, just immersing yourself in that topic.
So in other words, if you're, let's just say you're a writer, because it's easy for me to say, and you're spending an hour looking on Facebook, that doesn't count. If you're sitting there messing around, that doesn't count. Some messing around is productive, and I engage in. So it's a little hard to quantify, but it's really those hours where you're focusing. And if your field probably will require several things. It's not just physical or whatever. It usually requires 3 or 4 different skills. If you're focusing and paying attention to the skills and things that are required for that field, that will count towards the 10,000 hours.
This week on London Real, we're taking you back to our 2012 interview with futurist Jacques Fresco.
We must eventually design a language that's not subject to interpretation. Whenever you talk to people, you think you're talking to people. It goes in their ear and comes out in relation to their background. They don't hear exactly what you say. There is no way you can think outside of your culture.
What if we elected you president this year and you started in the Oval Office January 20th, 2013?
I'd be shot in 3 days. Who makes the decisions in the Venus Project? The answer, nobody. They arrive at them. We abolish all separate nations because they're all corrupt.
Jacques Fresco has been designing cities of the future.
What do you think of England and London?
Foul, awful, no city planning. All cultures are corrupt.
And the banking system, what do we do with
Bank
that?
it gone, no money anymore.
On Sunday, London Real presents Jacques Fresco, The Venus Project, Redux.
Most politicians know nothing. Please don't take my word for it. Ask them.